As we prepare for the next Wagner in Vermont festival coming up in August 2023, we'll be introducing you to some of our people who helped to build the festival, including a range of performing artists and production team members. And today I'm delighted to be spending some time with one of our singers, James Chamberlain, and checking in with him as he prepares to take on the title role of Siegfried for the first time at Wagner in Vermont 2023. Some of you will have seen James in the role of Siegmund in Die Walküre, either live last year at the festival or on our YouTube channel. And James is based in Houston, Texas, and has a voice that has been described by critics as one that deserves to be heard, and so strong that you understood why it could knock a nice druid girl right out of her gown. James, thank you for chatting with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to dig straight into my questions. After singing Siegmund last year, what's it like to prepare Siegfried, Siegmund's son, for this year? Apart from playing your own son, how do the roles compare for you?
That's a very interesting question. I've been really digging into the differences between the two of Siegmund and Siegfried. One thing that I've come up with is that Siegmund, he was brought up within society. So, like, they talk about him being off on his own and his father raising him, um, and them being the wolves of the forest and stuff. But you also hear that he interacts with a lot more people, other people. Like he has the confrontation where he tries to save the woman from an arranged marriage that she doesn't want. Also, he has a time where he talks about how every time he tries to make friends, he's ostracized by everyone. So it's obvious that he definitely is within society. He knows a lot more. He's had more people teach him things than just Wotan.
Mm.
But Siegfried really, I think he does know other people besides Mima. I've been going over that with myself a couple of times, just trying to figure out. It's like, wait, okay, if he says this, like he calls the Wanderer an old man. It's like, well, how does he know what an old man is if all he knows is Mima? It's little things like that,
Yeah,
or or when he first finds Brunhilde, it's like, oh, not a man. Like, how does he know what not a man is?
yeah.
But the what he has learned, everything he has learned has come from one person, and that's Mima.
Hmm.
Everything else, like whether he's just through passing, has met other people. So I think the big difference is just that he is so naive to the world, and you can even see that in a lot of things. The way he interacts, the fact that, oh, he doesn't know what fear is. It's little things like that you really see his naivety. And while I've been preparing this role, one of the things that most people that do this role kind of, the word that we've been using is, they treat Siegfried as a brute.
Mm.
He's just this angry man who hates Mima, and all he does is wants to do is fight and kill, and that's his life. And I've been looking at it more as Siegfried is a child going through puberty, because you can see some of the loving things that he actually does say to Mima. If you actually read it, he does say things that are loving. It says he says things that he has connection, but he has mood swings. And
Hmm.
it's kind of
Okay.
like, that's kind of like going through puberty, where the littlest thing can, like, your emotions, your hormones, everything is just raging. The littlest thing can set you off. And I think that's kind of what Siegfried is. I think he is just trying to figure out what's going on. And then this one day he sees his reflection. He knows what Mima looks like. He's like, I don't look anything like you. All the birds look like birds. All the bears look like bears. And so he starts having this realization, and he starts questioning. Like, really, what's going on here? And that kind of sets the interaction between Mima and Siegfried. And that's kind of why I feel that he gets a little, not a little physical, a little bit more angry, but
Hmm.
he's not, maybe not anger is not the right word, maybe just mad, confused as to what the relationship is. And as the relationship gets played out, and he finds out more and more. Okay, he's not actually my parent at all. Okay, he's my adoptive parent. Okay, wait a minute. Now you're trying to force me to go learn this fear thing. I just want, and one of the reasons and one of the line that I like the most that shows to me that Siegfried cares about Mima in a certain way, not that he wants to have an ongoing loving relationship with him. He doesn't. Especially once he finds out he's not his parents. No. But right before he goes to kill Fafnir, or I should say meet Fafnir, Siegfried says, if you go down by that stream down there, that's where Fafnir's going to go. That's where I'm going to go. If you're there, he's going to eat you before I kill him. He even says, I'll let him eat you before you kill him.
Yeah.
But he does say, do not go there. Go somewhere else. Wander somewhere else. So while he doesn't necessarily want to be with Mima, he also doesn't want to kill him. He doesn't want
Mm.
to see him die. He just doesn't want to be with him.
Yeah. He
So
doesn't
I think
blame
the one
Mima.
of the I'm sorry, was that
He doesn't blame Mima for the life that he's had. In
mm-mm. He's he is to a point grateful that he knows that that is his step parent, or I
Mm.
should say adoptive parent, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he knows that he has his life. His life is happened only because of me. Without him, he dies as an infant child or a baby, I should say.
Mm.
So I don't know. The big difference to me is when I was preparing Zygmunt, I always said that he is a man of principle. He has his sets of principles and he holds those to be true above everything else. They are not principles that are shared by the rest of society. One being, hey, this woman who is married to somebody else, well, I love her, so she's now mine.
Hmm. Yeah.
Or she doesn't love the person that she is with. She hates that man. That means their marriage doesn't mean anything. So she's available.
Mm.
Um, so there's little things like that, but society does not say that that's true. Siegmund says it's true. It's true. That's how he will live. Siegfried is still learning. He has no idea
Mm.
what to think. He 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 is very emotional. Everything is just pure emotion. And he wears it all and he shows it all. I mean, there's times the one of the lines that I think is like two of them. That's actually when he talks about the death of his mother. Like he said, I mean, he says that so my mother died because of me, and it's set in a way that you can hear him crying. I
Mm.
can at
Hmm.
least. And then later when he uh in the second act when he talks about how um do all mothers die while having their sons? He is very emotional. Like that really again, you can hear the emotion in the music. So he's not afraid to show all of that.
Mm.
And I think those are kind of a little bit of the differences between the two characters.
Yeah. Yeah. He's more three-dimensional than people tend to, because he has the big thing about forging the sword, and that seems quite brutish and it's big, and a lot of the music is quite brash, but it's those small moments where actually he lets some of the tenderness that, or some of the anxiety of himself out, that actually we need to look out for, and that contrast with Siegmund.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there's so much contrast in there in the score. You can hear it. How and and like I said, that's kind of why I'm playing it um, with the emotion. He does get set off very quickly. He will go from okay, what's going on to really angry.
Yeah.
Um, and that we actually I came up with one thing that I've seen in the score where he gets truly to the point where okay, we're gonna fight now because there's two times he gets into a fight with Fafner and the Wanderer.
Hmm.
Both times they laugh at him. So if somebody laughs at him, that's not gonna end well for the other person.
Mm.
Essentially, that's his set off. That's his. There is no coming back. You laugh at me, now something's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's very volatile, very like teenage, adolescent, that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Hmm. How do they compare in terms of how you have to prepare them? So there's always the joke that Siegfried never stops singing. He's constantly singing. I mean, the opera's got his name in the title. Um, he just never stops. What I know you've been preparing this for about a year now, basically since the last festival.
Yep.
Um, so how do you go about that? How do you actually start to kind of learn all of those notes and those rhythms and put all of that roll together?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm still working at it. It is just a unrelenting role. Uh, one of the big differences, though, that I found between the two, well, about an hour of singing between the two, more for Siegfried. Um, it's Siegfried also sings really, really fast, a lot. Most of his tempo is very quick.
Hmm.
So there's that, and then um, the Siegfried actually does when he's in a scene with another character. Most of the time, he talks less than they do.
Okay.
Like we joked around, like if it's just Act One and Act Two, this opera is called Mima. It is not called Siegfried. If you just take Act One and Act Two, not even close. Act Three is what gives it my name instead of Mima's. But because we joked around like Act One, we're like, okay, Mima, you're talking a lot. There's large chunks where he's singing, and of course, anytime if you're on the stage with the Wanderer or Wotan, you know he's gonna talk. He likes to talk. Um, so it's not necessarily the long chunks unless until you get into Act Two when I'm on the stage by myself. Then it's obviously it's me for 25 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, it's that's the big difference that I find between the two roles. I think Zygmunt shares the stage a little bit, or sorry, he takes the stage a little bit more when he's on it, no matter what. Especially in the first act of Die Valkyrie, he he takes big chunks that he sings, and then somebody else sings for a little bit, and then he sings, and then somebody else sings for a little bit.
Hmm.
That would be one difference. Um, how I've just I went for this role that's usually the same way I went for every that I do every other role. You get your translations done. You look at your score. You um you prep your score, which I love doing that, highlighting everything and put tabs all over everything. I have three different highlighter colors, I think, in my score. Um, do that, and then you get your translations, talk through the all of the text. Just talk through it. Don't even worry about your notes. Wagner is great with having his own language almost. There's so many words that it's like I've never seen this word before. Um, so you have some interesting text that you have
Mm.
to maneuver through, and then it's just sitting at a piano playing notes nonstop. What it seems like sometimes, but for me, the learning process, I go through learning the rules, the notes, the rhythms, learning it fairly quickly. I can handle quick learning. It's the memorization that takes a little bit of time for me. So I try to get through the just learn everything really quickly, as quick as possible, and then take my time with actual memorizing it. Because the more time I have to memorize, the better it will be for me.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, some people find that the learning process, if they repeat enough, they're basically memorized by the end. But I guess with a role that's just simply as big as this, there's so many words to remember and so many different sentences and answers, and you've got to learn everyone else's lines as well in those scenes where
Hmm.
they're singing for 25 minutes. So it's just a different thing altogether. It's
Yeah,
another.
I have when I learn books, because I know some people like to use note cards.
Mm,
I use little mini composition books. So just a comparison of this role. I can't compare it to Zygmunt because I used a different size book, so the page numbers don't matter because it's a different size book. But um, the most, not the most recent, but I've sung Tosca many times, Cavaradossi. That has 11 pages of words. Just my words, 11 pages. Zygmunt has 44. So it's about four times the length of an an already what you would consider to be a larger role of
mm.
Cavaradossi. That's not a small role. But Siegfried is about four times the amount of words because he also doesn't repeat words.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not like Italian opera where there's a repetition and you say things several times. It's everything's new.
The I mean, there's a few words, of course. I say no to him so many times. That one I say a lot.
Yeah.
But besides that, there's not a lot of repeating of like important text. You don't repeat the same thing over and over again, except for
Mm.
neidlicher Schwert. That's
Yeah.
it. Those are the Notung neidlicher Schwert. That's and I say that many times, but
Yeah.
that's about it.
Yeah. I get a few hoya to hoes and haya ha's that repeat as a Valkyrie, but yeah, there's not a lot in the whole ring cycle that repeats itself.
Mm-mm. No, I say hi ho a lot too.
Okay.
It makes me think very much that I'm one of the dwarfs
Yeah.
in Sleeping Beauty. I say hi ho many
Yeah.
times.
It's a different feeling.
I think so. I think a little bit.
You mentioned a bit about Cavaradossi there, which is a role that I believe you've sung several times. And obviously, we have a limited view on what you sing, Siegmund, Siegfried. What are the other roles that you sing regularly? And do you have any kind of dream roles that you hope to get into in the next few years?
So the role that I've sung the most productions of would be Cavaradossi.
Hmm.
I've done five productions of Cavaradossi. Um, and then the role that I've actually performed the most times is Pagliacci, Canio.
Okay.
I've done that role, oh, what am I at? 11 or 12? I think about 12 times. 12 productions. Or sorry, 12 shows. Um, and that I love that. I love Canio so much.
Mm.
And I would love I know the next time I do it, because every time, I mean, to me, every time you do a role, what can you add to it that you didn't do last time? What's different now? Whether is it different with the characterization, different the way you want to handle the music, just the line. What can you add that you didn't couldn't do the last time just because of your own limitations that you now can, and or just like what have you learned more about the character that since as you get older you learn more and more about yourself, you learn more and more about the world, different with like different ways that you're going to handle different situations. And I love taking that and putting it into my characters. So Kanio then is the next one that I haven't done for a few years. It's like I can't wait to do that one again, to add there's like many different things. It's like, oh, I can do this different now. And another part of it is even like just with the Siegfried talking about how everybody plays him as a brute and all that. Um, Kanio gets a very bad rap too, as being this angry brute. And I think there's different ways you can play that. So I've been thinking about different ways to do different parts of that piece.
Mm.
So those are my two favorites that I've done. I've done a bunch of Puccini. I've actually sung in two operas that rarely ever get done. La Rondine. I just got done doing a La Rondine this past spring, or sorry, this past. Yes, it's still winter. It was in March, so it was. I guess technically it was still winter when I did it. And um, La Ville, no, sorry, Le Ville. That's his first opera that he ever wrote. I did that one too. Nobody does that, and there's a reason. But um, some of the roles that and I don't know if it's because I'm fickle or what, my dream roles change all the time. If you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have told you my two dream roles would have been Otello and Calaf.
Okay.
Now I would consider Lohengrin
Hmm.
and Samson.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't, there's just something about Samson and Delilah that just, it draws me to that opera. And I don't know why, but I would just love to do that. And I know that one's not done as often either.
Hmm.
I still want to do Call Off. Don't worry. I mean, I still want to do that one. But I think more the Samson is, it's more because it's not done as often
Hmm.
that it kind of draws me to that role. And the Lohengrin, it's just, I was in the chorus for a Lohengrin, and I don't know. It was just one of my favorite experiences as a chorus member. And that role, that opera is just, it's great. I love that opera. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, great roles. It is interesting. You say like the roles that you sing develop over time, but the roles that you want to sing develop over time as well. That 10-year gap is big because you get to know yourself as a performer as well and what you actually enjoy doing on stage, which may not be what you enjoyed 10 years ago. So, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
one thing also for me, because I was in the Houston Grand Opera chorus, I was in for 8 seasons and I did 30 productions at Houston Grand Opera. And I did a lot of Verdi. I loved Verdi. And I thought, oh, my voice, it's Verdi. That's what it is. I sing all of the like I sing the arias, and most of the time I'm like, okay, yeah, this is all right. And sometimes I'm like, no, I hate this aria. This is terrible. And I slowly have found out. Now, I haven't touched Verdi in a while. Verdi isn't where my voice for a very long time liked to be. I wanted it to be there, but it didn't want to be there.
hmm,
So I kind of found out where my voice wanted to be. And that's one of the reasons also that I changed.
hmm.
Like I know it sounds weird, but my voice likes being in Puccini and Wagner.
Yeah, they're funny. They're kind of
And
opposites even.
you would think they are. And so that's what I find very interesting. Now I definitely am going to go back to some Verdi. I've added a Verdi back into my aria packet. Not a big one, but just a smaller Verdi aria. And so I'll go back and live with some more.
Hmm.
So Verdi might come back in. I'm not saying that I don't want to sing Manrico and Trovatore. Would love to. I think I could actually handle the arias now
Mm-hmm.
without having to drop it a half step, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's funny because it's that thing of following where your voice wants to go. And a lot of people almost see Wagner and Wagnerian singing as like the end of where your voice goes. Because for a lot of singers, they have to kind of grow into that repertoire. But for singers who are meant to be in that repertoire, actually, that's how you learn to sing everything else. You kind of find your way into that because that's where you feel most at home or most comfortable. And then kind of come back to the things like you say, come back to the bit of Verdi that suits you after that. So it's interesting to hear that. I've heard that from several singers who have met through the festival or various other Wagner things. That it's yeah, if you're really if your voice likes Wagner, sometimes it has to do that first and then come back to maybe there's a sense of refinement it needs to find through letting go and letting go into the German rep that, who knows? But it's interesting that
Yeah,
it's.
I don't know the reason for it, but I felt definitely felt the same way.
Hmm.
I mean, especially when taking the the Zygmunt when I started singing that with my coach, and she would just look at me. She's like, "This really fits. This sounds really good. This really works for you." And then even going to the Siegfried, which vocally is very different.
Hmm.
I didn't get into that before, but vocally it is very different. It's much higher tessitura. Like I at one point I'm a little OCD and I get a little crazy. And I counted how many A's he sings in this role. And I forget what it was. I wrote it down. It's over 100
Wow.
A's. That's a lot. Zygmunt, I can tell you right now how many A's Zygmunt has in his entire role. Do you want to guess the answer?
It's not as many as Siegfried, but I couldn't guess it. Just one. Yeah.
One.
I was going to say that
So,
tends to be the money note for the kind of more dramatic tenor roles. It tends to be the money
oh
note for
yeah,
the A. Yeah,
Longren's the same way.
yeah.
Like he comes in, boom, A. It's like sing, sing, A, sing, sing, A. That's essentially what it is.
Hmm.
But the Zygmunt role, I almost it's people like to go there because it doesn't get too high.
Hmm.
Like you like to start with Zygmunt because it doesn't get too high, so you're not stressing your voice to go to the high notes while trying to still produce the amount of sound that needs to be
Hmm.
produced for Wagner. Um, but it's very baritonal, very baritonal. Siegfried is not as baritone because you have that many high notes.
Hmm.
But finding out that my voice, I had a lesson last week, and my teacher just looked at me. He's like, "Your voice really likes to sing A's. You have to get out of the way sometimes of it, but your voice likes to sing an A."
Hmm.
And so it's just finding those little things that you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. Okay, this is how I sing it in Wagner. Now let me take that to Puccini." And like I said, the La Rondine that I just did, that has a couple of B's, a high C, and it's just like, okay, I'm good, no problem here. Sing it like I would if I was singing Wagner.
Yeah. Which people don't think of Puccini in that way. They think of it more as it's so Italian that it people don't tend to associate it that way. So that's interesting.
Well,
But
I do, and I will say there is a difference in the way I sing Italian as I do my German. There is a difference, and
yeah.
when I went I was preparing the Siegfried for a while, and then I switched back to the La Rondine that I did in March, and my coach was like, "Okay, you need to take off your German, whatever you have on, and we need to put our Italian back on." So there was many weeks where I was just like, "Nope, that is not Italian. That is German. Stop doing that." And so there is that difference that you do have to find, and mostly it's just in the way you pronounce words. It really is
Mhm.
for me. In the German rep, you German words you pronounce a lot of it. There's a lot of consonant. In Italian, it's a lot of vowel. and you don't want too much consonant. So it's just like that difference between the two. But once you get that,
Yeah.
it's they're not that different.
So, some people might not know that when you arrived at Wagner in Vermont 2022, you were actually covering Siegmund. And on the first day of rehearsals, you were asked to step in and sing the role. And you went on to do it incredibly well in those productions. But what was it like to kind of get that message and, and think, I've got to go on, it's me, I'm taking on this big role? What's it like? What goes through your head at that moment?
Well, what went through my head at the moment? I mean, I was covering. I was also covering Fro
Yeah.
in uh in Rheingold. So I was sitting. We had the first rehearsal for Die Valkyrie, and then I sang most of the day because we did both Act One and part of Act Two and Act One. And then the next day, that morning I showed up to cover my role, my other role. And I was sitting there, just sitting in the audience, covering my role, and I was approached and told that I was now going to be the principal. And I was the first thing, obviously. I mean, the way I am. It just my emotions just like I almost started to cry, like I was tearing up just because I'm like, oh my god, it was just like a dream. Um, it it's just it's an amazing feeling. And then I get to very quickly, I think about the person that I'm replacing and what goes through that process with them. So I always think about the person because this has happened to me before.
Mm.
And so my mindset always thinks about the person um, that I'm replacing, and I always want to make sure that I like it that they're okay, that stuff is going on because it's a very difficult process for everybody involved. Decisions like that, no matter what the circumstances are hard.
Mm. Mhm.
So um, it was just a great feeling. I mean, and of course they were like, okay, you're no longer covering Fro, so you can go home, which that's nice. Um, so I called my wife, just let her know. She is my by far my biggest fan. So she was like screaming into the phone. She was so happy. Um, and it's just it's hard to describe just how great it feels that you put so much preparation into something because being a cover is so hard. It is so difficult to prepare a role that you know you're not using, to put that much work and effort into something that you're not going to use. Not right now. Future, yes, and that's why we cover because you can use it in the future. But I mean, we're human. Everything you want that immediacy. You want that I'm using it now. So it was a great feeling. It was one thing though that I will because I said I've done this before and that happened to me before where I was covering and they came up to me and they're like, okay, you're the principal now. I'm like, oh, okay, let's do this. So once I get past that emotion, then it's the pragmatic. Okay, how is my preparation? Am I ready to go right now? Am I okay? And I've had moments where I was covering early in my career and I made the mistake of not being 100% ready. And I'm going to say it was heartbreaking to me to know that I failed that badly. So I will never do that again. It'll never happen. So I was ready to go.
Mm.
And I've since that, I've always been ready to go. But it's just doing what you love to do, which is perform. I mean, I love performing. I love being on the stage. I love having that interaction between all of the castmates and all of the production staff, everybody that brings everything together to create an opera. It's exhilarating. So when you get told you're going on now, it's just like, hey, let's have fun.
That's where I want to be. I want to be on the stage, not sitting in the audience, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
covering. It's hard. That's why we absolutely love the covers who take on roles. Like there's so many people who will be part of the festival this year or who were last year who will be covering those roles. And it's such a hard job to do. So we have massive respect for anyone who's taken on covers. Um, it's not easy, but yeah, emotional roller coaster. And of course, with the festival being quite a fast process, we I think we had in total 7 or 9 days to put together two whole operas, which was the first experience for a lot of people doing that in a kind of Wagnerian scale. So these operas are very big with a very
Mm-hmm.
small production period. People tend to do smaller production periods with smaller operas. It makes sense. So that, we're kind of all in the building all the time. So it very much makes that a family feeling. You were there so much for all those rehearsals and everyone was there kind of able to cheer you on and support you in that. So it's great to hear that you loved doing it as much as we loved watching you.
Well, and the support that I got from everybody was amazing. It, everybody was on my side. There was not one person in that building that was I'm not going to say cheering for my failure because we don't do that as opera singers. I'm sorry. People think we do. We don't. We
No.
don't cheer for failure ever. Um, but everybody was there to bend over backwards to give me what I needed. And I could tell and I could feel that. And it's great knowing that everybody has not only that they have your back, but they're ready to support you when you need it. And going into and like you said, that was a very short production uh, time period, and they had already staged pretty much all of Act One, which Zygmunt enters the stage first and leaves the stage last. He's through the entire thing. He does not leave during Act One. It's a little over an hour long. Do not leave. And so it was a little that part was strenuous. That was I was stressing out about okay, well, wait, we're gonna do this and this. Okay, what am I gonna do here? And it was because it was not necessarily a true cover because I wasn't there for any of the other the little rehearsals that they had done.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially, because to me, a cover when you are ready to cover, you need to pretty much do what the other person did. There's not as much time for you to put your own stamp on it. But because it was a whole production, it was a little bit of me. I got a chance to put my own stamp on that role. And I saw it a little differently than the original person who was singing. So there were little changes that I was making that they had already worked out. So Roseanne and I had to work out exactly the differences that we were going to do than what they had already worked.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
part was a little bit of stress, but everybody was just like, "Oh, you want to do it this way? Okay, let's do it this way. Let's figure out how we're going to do it. Now let's do it." And
Yeah.
that quickly.
Yeah, and like working with Kirk and that as well, like all of that,
Oh yeah.
we kind of just put it together. These are very experienced people. It just kind of like you say, you can put your own stamp on it, which is kind of nice. You're not having to be in these exact points around the stage.
Hmm.
Um, so there is a bit of flexibility there when you jump in for a role like that. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to think beyond the festival. Like there's so much prep still to do. But do you have any fun things that are coming up? Can you give us any hints as to what's coming up post Wagner in Vermont 2023?
Um, I do not have a lot on my schedule right now. So the fall, I might be doing a little bit of an audition trip
Okay,
to somewhere not in the United States.
come visit.
That's that's the plan right now. And then I have a in the spring, that's where I'm going to start doing a little bit more stuff. I have of a recital that I was asked to give. And I've been planning this recital for many years, so somebody actually asked me to do it. It was really great. Um, it's called I've named it My Life in Music, and
Nice.
it's literally going through pieces that I had like started with my first aria that I ever learned when I was 16 years old. I auditioned for college using this aria, and then it just like little chunks. It's like, okay, well, this art song was something that I sang for a recital, so I make a little set of those, and then going through my period because I was a baritone all through undergrad, and then it's like, okay, well, this is how I learned to go from baritone to tenor, and some of the stuff, and then a couple of things that I've done in the past 10 years, just like sets of some. So I'm going to do sets of Wagner, some Strauss, just little things that remind me of areas of my life. And I actually commissioned a person down here, a local legend down here in Houston. He is setting three hymns, some of mine and my family's favorite hymns, and I'm gonna sing those. I'm gonna premiere two of those.
Nice.
So that'll be a really fun recital. And then I have an engagement in May that we're not sure which show we're doing.
Okay.
It's either going to be one that I've done before or the one that I want. So I
Okay,
won't tell you which are which because
no
that would just be,
spoilers.
yeah, no spoilers.
We'll have to look out for that one.
And then plans are to be coming back to Vermont in 2024.
Yeah, hopefully, when all of that gets officialed. Yeah. So you talked about your life in music. What a fascinating recital. One of my questions for you is if we jumped in the car with you for a road trip, what is the soundtrack? Is it all opera and classical, or what else would be on that soundtrack?
Okay, so the recital is all classical. I'm
Yeah.
just going to tell you that it's all classical. I thought about throwing in a music theater, but then it's like I'm just not a musical theater. I'm a baritone. If I do anything musical theater, I'm a baritone,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't really want to do that. Um, such a great question because there are two different answers. It depends on who is with me. Is my wife in the truck? I say truck. I always say truck. We have a truck. We have done road trips. From Houston, we drove one summer. We went from Houston to Bar Harbor, Maine. 3 week road trip there, week up, week there, week back. Then we did one to upstate New York to Lake George. We had one planned to go up to like Glacier National Park, up in and go to like Montana, Idaho, stuff like that. That one we had to cancel. We're planning and gonna try to get that one back in planning. But for that road trip, my wife made what she called because we have a Ford F-150, so she calls this playlist the Voyage of the F-150, and it is the most eclectic playlist you have ever heard. It is It will go from Britney Spears to Waylon Jennings to Willie Nelson. Um, Slipknot, I believe, is on there. Black Sabbath. Anything you can think of is on that list. Uh, Besides classical, because this is driving music.
Mhm.
Um, if you're with me when I'm in my car by myself, I have three playlists that I use for the most part. One is alternative rock. That's all it is. It's Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, that type of music from the 90s into the 2000s. I listen to that most of the time. And then I have a classic rock playlist that I listen to. That's just like Beatles and David Bowie. I'm trying to think of all these names, and I'm gonna not remember half of them. But I mean, it's just all classic rock. So rock from the 70s,
Mhm.
splashing into the 80s a little bit. And then if I'm preparing a role, then you're going to hear classical music. You're going to hear that role.
Yeah, I imagine Siegfried goes on quite a bit on those long car journeys.
Yeah, I listen to it. I do listen to roles that I'm preparing.
Mm.
And so a lot of people, I've heard people talk about how you shouldn't don't listen to other people, don't listen to other singers. And I don't prescribe to that theory. I like to listen to many different singers
Mm.
to see how they treat everything in a role. And then I will figure out what I like and what I don't.
Mhm.
But mostly though, for me, once I get closer to when I already figure out what I want for the character, for what I want vocally for the character, I'm listening more for the orchestra. I'm listening to hear what goes on.
Mhm.
That I can't produce it. I can't produce it on the piano. I can't produce anything but my vocal live on the piano. Um, I cannot play the piano. So it's more for that listening than it is for. I'm not listening to the singer anymore. I don't do that. So
Mhm.
I'm listening to the orchestra. It's like I want to hear, and also I'm listening to everybody else's part because that's a way that I can that helps me learn someone else's part is to
Yeah.
hear it done. And to me, it's much better when you do it with an orchestra if that's how you're going to perform it.
Yeah, yeah, you get much more of a sense of like when things are in the brass, but actually the brass is really quiet, rather than like in the sometimes in the vocal score it'll say brass, but if you're not able to kind of get hold of those full scores and you haven't got the time to spend sitting absorbing every note in a full score because they're huge, then yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely getting that orchestration from the recordings, it's invaluable. But
yeah.
sounds like I'd enjoy your other playlists as well in the car. That sounds like fun. Where are we going? Next road trip.
That's the thing. Right now, unfortunately, we have to get a new truck before we do our next road trip. So
Oh no, but that
we
might
have we
mean
have a
a new
19-year-old truck that I don't want to take on a 5 to 6 thousand mile
playlist.
trip again.
Yeah, maybe not. Great. Well, that's one more question from me. What would be your number one reason why people should travel to Brattleboro, Vermont this August for the Wagner in Vermont Festival?
I'm going to steal something from Hugh that he has said many times. And the first time I heard him say it, I was like, okay. And then when I lived it, I'm like, yeah, it's this is paraphrasing, but in during the festival, especially during 2022, and it's going to happen again in 2023, we're going to create something magical. And the first time he said that, I was like, yeah, we're going to. And then when after my last performance of Die Valkyrie, that's what it felt like. Everything, it was just that production, just it felt magical. like what everybody pulled together to do. And that's what I think is the main reason to come up to see Tundi. The the productions that we do, everybody is doing it. I'm not going to say just for the love, but a lot for the love of those scores, of those shows, of each other. We're a little family. We keep growing every year, which is great, but we're still a little family and we have fun. And you create that environment where everybody was is just having fun, but also is amazingly talented. This group is amazingly talented, and you put all of that together, and yeah, you create magic. And I honestly think that there's just gonna there's gonna be another week of just magic happening in Vermont in August, and that's why everyone should come out.
Absolutely. That's why everyone should come out. So, Fab, it's been so wonderful to kind of hear your side of all of this prep and stuff in advance of the festival. So, thank you so much for talking to me today. And we look forward to seeing you up on the stage. I'll see you in rehearsals as well. And we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you so much.